I will say that I was attending a watch party for the last episode and made a goof that Ari's personality is based off the lyrics to "One Week" by the Bare Naked Ladies. Hence the history of losing my shirt, and I think I might run with that for a while. So that might become a thing where I just start
Do
to
we
pull lyrics,
start acting out the
yeah.
acting out the lyrics of Bare Naked Lady songs?
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to Khyber Shards, a 5th edition actual play set in the Eberron campaign world. I'm Philip.
I'm Eric.
Wait, no, I go after Colin.
That's RA.
I'm RA.
And this is another of our Friday extras. This is another Q&A, this time with both RA and Eric, because I wanted them both on this one after the madness of the last episode.
That fairness in journalism thing where you can't just present one side of the issue. So
need both sides. Now, we will talk a little bit about what happened in the last episode, but I won't just talk too much about it because it is, as you can probably imagine, a big bit of Monday's episode is the aftermath as well, and so I don't want to deal with that. But we can talk about it a little bit from a player perspective.
I am very glad that we're recording this after we recorded that episode, though, because I feel like if we were recording this before,
that's true. We might have overshared. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
that's a lot more raw.
It's probably a good call. And of course, we took a bunch of questions from our patrons and from the people on our Discord. So if you would like to be able to submit questions for these, you can find the link to our Discord in the description. That's what you call that thing down there.
Yes.
The what's it? You can find the link to that down there, along with all of our other social media, where we are pretty much just the Geek Pantheon everywhere. So, you look for Geek Pantheon, you'll probably find us. We even had a Google Plus until that ship went all the way down.
Yeah.
So
it was
we
extremely
rode Google Plus straight to the bottom. So we're everywhere as the Geek Pantheon.
Before my time.
If you like what you see on this channel or through our podcasts, you can also support us on patreon.com/thegeekpantheon, where we have various tiers that involve additional channels on our Discord, as well as some neat perks. Eric and I create a DM spell book, which is a big OneNote full of our random creations, mostly for 5th edition, though a little bit for Genesis ever since Campaign 2 has started up. And that tier is what's that tier?
That's $3 a month.
That's the $3 tier. All right.
Tier. And access to your World Anvil also, correct?
Yes, I did post a link to my World Anvil. I did post a link to my World Anvil on there, so you can follow along to a certain degree with the creation of my home games. But anyway...
RA knows.
Ooh, I'll have to check that out.
I mean, everything that's posted there is already it's not my planning. I'm not foolish in that specific area of my life. Lots of other things, the number of minis that I own, that kind of thing. But anyway, this is terrible. Anyway, let's move on. So first, I have a couple of questions that I want to ask for the two of you that I've asked the others. And the first one is, what is something you have learned about your character since we started? We talked a lot about how characters are not really people you know until you've gotten to play them for a while. Well, you guys have gotten to play them for a few sessions now. So what's something each of you have learned about your characters? RA is closer to me on the screen. So RA, what's something you've learned about Esri?
He's a little bit more a man of action than I expected. That may just be a function of, we're playing a game that requires you to not just be passive all the time, because that's the sort of the premise of of the activity is you are the story, right? You're the center of this part of the story. But I found that while he may disapprove of what's happening, he's definitely in no way willing to just let things happen. Even in our early episodes where Ari got into a little bit of trouble, it was Esri that felt immediate need to get in there and help, while the others took a little bit of time to warm up to the idea of getting involved.
Enjoy the show a little. All right. And Eric, something you've learned about Ari.
I know I've joked about this with our group. I don't know if I've joked about it on the air. Ari is a much more responsible and more of a grown-up in the room than I was expecting him to be, just out of necessity. I know that Philip was expecting it to be a fairly young crew, but I just, for some reason, was in standard D&D party mode, and so I was like, a 22-year-old, I'll be like the kid of the party. I'll be the young one. I can be a little wacky and crazy. And then once everyone else introduced the characters, like, oh no, so Ari's been a lot more responsible, I guess, is the best way. Like he tries to think about things from a sense of what are the consequences, which is not something I was expecting out of him. So
okay,
yeah,
cool, excellent. So before we get into questions, your characters had very, very different reactions to the big moment in our last episode in Awakening. And I mean, I will say that episode has been released. So if you are watching this and you haven't yet watched the most recent actual story episode, go back and do that, because
put a link right there for you.
There's yeah, right here, Eric, put it right there. Okay, that's where it goes.
It can only go in one corner, Philip.
Oh, well, okay.
Until they change it in a few months, and then you don't know where it is.
Fair.
Anyway, go back and watch that, and so that you won't have that spoiled.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a second. All right. So you two had very big, very, very different reactions, or your characters did. I don't know if you two did, but your characters had very different reactions to the big reveal of Donabella having a mark. And I think, well, let me ask you this. Was it more, were your big reactions more to, oh man, this kid's got a mark and she doesn't know? Or was it, oh my word, Pog just revealed his mark to this kid?
For Esri, it had nothing to do with Pog.
Okay.
And yeah, I won't go too much more into that for reasons, but no, Esri was 100%. I mean, as soon as he as soon as the rest of the group, or at least, I guess Pog didn't really, but as soon as Shade and Ari got involved, and Esri decided to get involved as well, he thought he knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. It turned out to be right, which is not what he wanted. And from then on, everything flowed from his own childhood experience. Everything was colored directly by that.
Okay.
For Ari, Eric? it was very much like she has a mark, because I know we're playing an aberrant focused campaign, and so Eric obviously had it in the back of his mind, like, oh, we're probably experiencing a child who has a mark. But from Ari's standpoint, I mean, there could be a witch somewhere that's just,
sure,
spoons, activate. And so Ari was just dealing with a classic Stormreach situation, and so the fact that she had a mark, which he found out after everybody else, because he needed a shirt. Yeah, I mean, his big reaction was very much like the, oh crap, this child is one of us, and yeah, and just that, all of the baggage that comes with that Ari has learned over his years of living. So yeah.
So
if it had been a mark that wasn't obviously aberrant to Esri, he would have dropped her off inside the house and walked away.
Yeah.
He would not have had worry about her, but it was.
So I'm curious, again, as players more than as characters.
Sorry, it's just it once again speaks to the divide between our characters, because Ari would be so much more worried if she had a true mark. Like, he would be filled with so much more. Oh, they're going to ship her off, and they're going to and so it's just once again just our dichotomous worldviews is hysterical to me, because we did not plan it either. That's what's wonderful about this. Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about that, because in the scene, just from a player perspective, in the scene, Esri was obviously much more worried about leaving the house, about leaving the girl with her parent, whereas Ari, as soon as the insistence on getting out of the house was very clear, Ari was quickly complying. However, it's been made clear, although we haven't had quite as much occasion in the show to explore it, it's been made clear that Ari feels much more militantly opposed to the houses than Esri. And so I'm curious, how are you guys enjoying this discovery of your very sort of complementary to a degree viewpoints on this, that we're sort of getting I don't know, I was going to say a Magneto Professor X thing going on, but I don't know which of you would be which, because it sort of depends on the topic.
Yeah, it's situational.
Well, and I don't know either. I know what 8 episodes, I guess, is where we've gotten to recording wise worth of Esri, so
yeah.
I mean, I love it. I think it's great that, especially for you, Philip, as the dungeon master, having a wonderful amount of toys to work with in terms of Ari and Esri's developing relationship, and situations that could force them to either reconcile or continue to see this divide continue to happen. Which I think is very like early, like X-Men First Class-esque wonderful levels of melodrama.
Yeah.
But no, I like it. I like the complementary nature, and I like the complexity of it, that it's not one of us is like, the world is out to get us and we have to rage against them, and the other one is like, no, everybody can be peaceful. It's more complicated than that. And I think that makes it, but it's not complicated. It's just interesting. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
It's not just that their worldviews are different. It's also that their personalities are at odds in ways as well. I mean, I'll go back to my first interview here, and it's not exactly 1-to-1, but it's Gambit and Cyclops, right? Mm-hmm. It's ultimately the endpoints probably are the same. It's just
the paths. Are you trying to say that you're the Gambit in this relationship? Because I feel like
I don't. I'm saying it's not 1-to-1.
I take my shirt off a lot, so I feel like one of us.
I've got a staff and am fashionable.
I'm trying to think of who I've seen with their shirt off more in the comics, because you get Scott with his shirt off like in a Top Gun-esque fashion pretty frequently.
But it's just that same kind of like, we're both, I think ultimately deep down they see the things that probably matter the most. I don't know this for sure. The same, but it's just like everything else is a different path.
Well, yeah, I think the situation that we're discussing is perfectly exemplary of that. Both of them want to see this girl protected and safe, and in a situation where she is not going to be harmed. They just have very different ideas of how to get there. So yeah, it's not that their goals are at odds. It's just the process. So.
Sure.
Yeah, I think they would both be 100% in agreement that like the best case scenario, the best thing that could happen is that like her mother protects her. I mean, I guess we don't know about the rest of her family, so
Yeah.
But at least her mother protects her and guides her and all that. Like, that's what they'd want. It's just, yeah, it's definitely you only have your experiences and education to go on, and for Esri especially, that's really just his experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the way the two of you played it and continue to play it in the next episode, which obviously we won't get into here, but just because again, as you say, it speaks so much to the background of the characters and their connection to the idea of family, and the amount of safety that there is in that. And that's just great. It's really cool. It's always fun to see when you can see the thought that a player has put into a character's actions, even if it kind of flows naturally, just because the player understands the character. It's just, I always enjoy seeing that a lot. All right. Well, let's get into some viewer questions. So first off, we have some questions from Laura. Laura wanted me to repeat some questions from the last couple that she thought would be interesting to hear all the players' thoughts on. So, were there other character concepts that each of you considered before settling on your character that you recall thinking hard about? I'm going to add, because I know all of us well enough to know that there were probably quite a lot of concepts you went through.
There's a backlog.
Yeah, but was there another concept that you were sort of on the edge of picking at some point in the process?
Not really. I talked about this before. I had this idea that I thought Casey might do, but I kind of fell in love with it and just waited till she said no, and then was like, okay. If she had said yes, then I would have started thinking of something. But I kind of fell in love with this idea.
Nice.
For me, the answer is also largely no, because, and I didn't really talk about it much in our one-on-one Ari intro, but I knew I wanted to make a character that was well-traveled and knowledgeable about the world, because I knew I, as the player, knew the most about Eberron. So I didn't want there to be this. I wanted to give my character the opportunity to know some of the things that I knew, and be one of the more knowledgeable people in the party. And so that's kind of where the core of our idea came from. And so I locked in on that really quickly. And then I also decided that I wanted to have a high charisma score, and that continued me down the warlock path. So Ari formed very much over the course of a process. I didn't sit down with a bunch of concepts and pick one. So yeah.
I have a question that I want to add to that, because I recognize bits of it, but not all of it. And obviously there's so much Eberron material out there that it's very easy for me to have overlooked something. How much of the things that you have said are core of our things are things you've pulled from specific Eberron sources, and how much are things that you are creating? Because I know in Eberron Renewed with Aris, a good bit of what I talk about with Dargul culture is stuff I've pulled from books, but there's also quite a lot of it where I have extrapolated things.
Yeah. So the base of Unity dinners and this sense of a cultural identity over a national identity being important to Korvar is straight from the Hat himself. I don't know if it's in any published books, but from Manifest Zone, his podcast, I heard him talk about. Most of Ari's cultural experience is actually influenced heavily by Romani culture, and that's where I'm pulling
that makes sense.
from, and trying to kind of inject that into Eberron through a subsect of Korvar culture. So that's where most of that's coming from. So
cool. All right. Then the follow-up question that Laura has been asking is, are your characters knowingly inspired by any character, fictional or historical?
No. Like I said, Ari was very much a product of a process of what I wanted to do in the game. And so while his mannerisms and things may begin to develop to reflect certain individuals with Southern accents and a lack of shirts, that was not intentional from the outset. So
initially, no. He's not based. The concept wasn't based on anything. existing that I was aware of. But as often happens, the more I ideated, like the more I had conversations with him in my head, I realized I was channeling a particular fictional character. I'm not gonna say who.
I can understand why.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
Oh,
I'll jump off a cliff here. I'm not going to say it. I will give away a source book on D&D Beyond.
Whoa.
To someone who can figure it out, but you don't get infinite guesses.
Okay.
So
All right, like 5 guesses.
5 guesses. Oh, you're being very
Five guesses per. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. Yeah.
So it is a fictional character.
It is a fictional character.
Okay.
I don't know that my acting's good enough for anyone to get
Tag
it.
Ari in the Discord so he can keep track of your guesses, because I'm not going to in the comment section. So go to our Discord and tag RA.
All right.
I will say that I was attending a watch party for the last episode and made a goof that Ari's personality is based off the lyrics to One Week by the Bare Naked Ladies, hence the history of losing my shirt. And I think I might run with that for a while. So that might become a thing where I just start to pull lyrics.
Start acting out the lyrics of Bare Naked Lady songs.
Yeah. So
Do we have a running count of how many times?
I think it's just 2 so far.
Twice so far. Yeah.
Well, no,
There seems to be an implication that it happens a lot.
Didn't we retcon that your shirt also got stolen when we were jumped before we got on the boat?
I think all of his extra shirts, all of the shirts in his luggage were stolen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's why the one on the ship was his last.
Yeah. That I then lost in that.
That you then lost, right?
So,
yeah. All right. Next, both of you have mentioned that you play a lot of. This is such a hard question. That you played a lot of TTRPGs and board games. Which ones are your favorite?
Ooh.
And remember, we're on a time limit here, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, tabletop RPG. So far, 5th edition has been the one that I usually want to return to most. I think it has so far the best blend of structure and it's just so well supported. There's so much out there.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I think the leveling steps are just like perfect at this point, to where you have just enough to do every time, but not so much to do that it's overwhelming. I remember leveling up in Pathfinder was like, I got to set aside a night, and like I had like
anytime you got
5
you got a feat, it was like,
yeah. I had like a 5-page path. For my monk when we were playing Pathfinder. It's like, okay, I have to do this and this and this so I can get to this, so I can get to this.
Honestly, when I would level up in Pathfinder, I would just go to an online guide for my class and be like, what do I need to take? Like, I'm not going to spend an afternoon looking through all these.
Oh yeah, no, I had a not a guide for what I was going to take, but we definitely had like a full page, step by step, do this and then do this and then do this. So I think 5th edition.
Welcome to our anti-Pathfinder show, Khyber Shards.
We're speaking
Just
of
in
first
the
edition.
leveling.
None of us have played 2nd edition, so I have no idea what the leveling's like in 2nd edition.
Board game wise, Pandemic is the all-time favorite. I think I've yet to play a board game that is more perfectly put together. It is almost always, as long as you're playing at your difficulty level, it's almost always like right on the edge. It's beautiful. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 was definitely like a benchmark in the hobby. More recent favorites, Scythe, love Scythe, and The Dead of Winters.
I own Dead of Winter, and I've never won a game. I hate that game so much.
I'm not sure I've won either. I've won with the group a couple of times, but I don't think I've ever won.
For tabletop RPGs, for me, obviously D&D 5th edition is the one that I have a lion's share of experience in. I do love the narrative role-playing game system, whether it be Star Wars or Genesis, just for a very different kind of feel in terms of your role-playing game experience. But kind of, the one that I just get really excited to play is like the one-sheet RPGs, like Lasers and Feelings or Everyone is John, like those ones that You can throw it down on a table, explain the rules in 15 minutes, and just do a fun night of gaming. So those are kind of my dessert tabletop RPG. In terms of board games, I'm gonna go with a genre just to be expedient about it. Legacy games. Ever since we played Risk Legacy, and then every Legacy
Risk Legacy
game after
was
that,
so much fun.
They're a
such a fun
blast. And so yeah, I love those games. So
Yes, when we introduced the zombie apocalypse in Risk Legacy, and then got an alien invasion, like there was
it's the concept of like buying a board game but not knowing what's included. Like we were
Yeah.
so excited when we peeled back that compartment of the box that we hadn't been able to see, and
Yeah.
there were mutants underneath from somebody dropping an atomic bomb. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So yeah.
Maybe we should just drop a like general. This show is spoiler heavy, just in general.
That's probably true.
Just don't expect things to not be spoiled.
Risk Legacy is like a decade old. I feel like
Yeah.
we're okay. Also, I don't know that it's even in print anymore because I haven't seen it at our game store. Anyway, moving on. Okay. Then Irene also asked this for Pog and for Shade, but what do you think your characters' current impressions are of their colleagues as of the incident with Donabella?
A mess.
I mean, it like going back to the initial one-on-one that we had, Philip, where it was like Ari likes Shade and Pog and isn't quite sure about Esri. I'm not sure the needle has shifted a whole lot on that. I think that I think that Ari has kind of fallen into this this elderly sibling role with Shade and Pog in a lot of regards. And I think maybe part of the divide is the fact that Esri doesn't conduct himself in a way to where he needs that kind of relationship. And so that's Ari's never had friends. He's had family. And so if somebody isn't interested in falling into that dynamic, then Ari doesn't really know what to do with himself in regards to making a friend. And so yeah, I think that he really likes Shade and Pog, and thinks that they are reliable and always there. And we haven't explored a whole lot of the 2 years, so I'm sure there would be plenty of instances of Ari and Esri being able to look out for each other. But as we're at right now with this episode, yeah, he's very salty with Esri, I guess is the best way to put it.
All right.
I think it's interesting the way you put that, because I think it's accurate, and also I'm I'm trying not to Esri here, but I also kind of find myself like, yeah, you're right, and you don't get that you're right, because I think you're right. I think Ari's like the elder child, Esri's the middle child, and like Pog and Shade are the little twins, right? The younger kids. So like we're
being so condescending to our fellow party members right now.
The younger twins, like they're the younger children that we both have decent relationship with, and
but we don't get along with each other.
Yeah, we don't see eye to eye. Esri's such a middle child.
I resemble that remark. All right. Less seriously, I imagine the other Eric inquires, how many spare shirts will Ari keep in his pack from now on?
Ari has coin, so I think I don't think him popping by a vendor to be like, hey, what's your cheapest shirt? Well, not that one. What's your cheapest, nicest shirt? Is an uncommon incident.
Ari just throws shirts away once they get dirty. Doesn't wash them, just new shirt.
You all use shirts more than once? What? They get dirty. You got to toss them. So no, if he were to travel, he would keep plenty of spare shirts, because Ari is, I almost said is a man of taste, but that sounds so, no, he's not that. He has grown a certain level of comfort putting down roots in a city.
Become accustomed to a certain standard of living.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, even if we were to have to hit the road again and branch out, I doing a classic D&D reference, Monty Python the Holy Grail with like Sir Robin's lackey's pack, where it's like an armoire on his back and everybody else has very reasonable adventuring backpacks. That would be Ari's situation. So yeah,
Cool. A question, I assume directed for me. Laura inquires: Is it normal in Eberron for people to react so strongly against people with aberrant marks, or is that just to enhance the X-Men vibes? So, I've noticed something in reading forums and reading discords and just examining the way that people encounter dragon marks in their games. There is a lot of information and a lot of consistency among DMs on what dragon marks are like. Although a lot of disagreement on which dragon marked houses are decent people and which are evil. Merrick's Decanus is a particularly divisive character. But there is no consistency on how aberrant marks are. And I think that's probably part of Keith Baker's thought process with them.
master plan.
Yeah. It's all, he's dividing us to conquer. I have based my interpretation of aberrant marks on reading all the aberrant mark stuff in the source books, and as well as rereading before this started, just as this was starting, the novel Son of Khyber, which deals heavily with aberrant dragon marks, and is by Keith Baker. And the impression I have gotten, the thing I have gotten, and maybe one day I'll get Keith Baker to tell me if I'm wrong, the impression I've gotten, and so my interpretation, and so what is true in this game, is aberrant dragon marks are not illegal anywhere. There's nowhere that you can be just arrested because you have an aberrant dragon mark. That's not a thing. However, the stories of the War of the Mark, 1,000 so years ago, 1,000? I don't remember. A long time ago. The stories of the War of the Mark, when you had aberrant marked individuals with catastrophic powers that could bring down massive diseases and earthquakes that could destroy cities like Sharn. These massively powerful, to use the comic book phrase, Omega level aberrant marks have been made so much of by the dragon marked houses and so heavily propagandized by the dragon marked houses that, yeah, I think the vast majority of people in Eberron are afraid of someone with aberrant mark. Not necessarily, oh my gosh, you have an aberrant mark, I must kill you. But, oh my gosh, you have an aberrant mark, are you going to kill me?
Yeah.
I think that is that fear. And I mean, in fairness, the fact that you never know what an aberrant mark can do, because they're not in any way consistent, because the fact that you never know what the power is that's associated with it, or whether the person, has control over it. Ari and Esri both have seem to have fairly significant control over their powers. But Shades is reactive. It's instinctual. She doesn't always mean, like sometimes she wants to, but she doesn't always mean for her power to activate. And so, yes, I think that is the intention from what I read in the books. That's my interpretation based on the books. I'm not intentionally enhancing it. I mean, I am using it to give the X-Men vibe. That's, as we said at the beginning, that's the vibe we're going for. So I'm playing up that part of the world, because that's the vibe we're going for. But I don't think that I'm exaggerating what's present in the source material.
And I will say they're talking about the control aspect, and I don't know how to provide this in the fiction, so I don't mind saying it here. There is a part of Ari that is deeply concerned that he doesn't have as much control as he thinks he does, and he is just influencing people, like that he's not as charming as he thinks, and he is manipulating people with his mark, and that makes him feel terrified. But another thing that I really like that Baker said, because obviously a lot of people are like, but if an aberrant mark can cast fireball and a wizard can cast fireball, what's the big deal? And it's just, Baker talks about the fact that, like, a wizard trained to learn how to cast fireball. The 6-year-old didn't. And so like, so there's that untrained element of like it's a wild cannon essentially.
What percentage of the population in this world has a mark of any sort?
Very small. I don't think there's an actual statistic anywhere, but I would say it's definitely single digit. Probably under 5% is what would be my guess.
So I mean, this is something that, aberrant or not, you could spend most of your life without being around.
Yeah, you probably couldn't spend most of your life without encountering the houses, but without actually encountering a marked individual, totally. Especially if you're not in an urban center where there's probably an enclave or something like that. If you're despite the fact that it's kind of undergoing a magical industrial revolution, most people in Eberron are probably still farmers. So if you're out on a village, if you're outside of a big urban center, then yeah, there'd be no particular reason for you to encounter an individual with particular marks. So there is definitely a mystique to it. And I mean, another thing that's in all the stories about marks and that we haven't really played with because it's early, is the fact that, at least as far as people understand them, unlike true dragon marks, aberrant marks tend to take a toll on the person who has one. Now, whether that's the house's interpretation or whether that's the fact is a question, but the tendency is the belief is that aberrant marks tend to lead to either horrible deformity or madness. And so there is if you're not a monster now,
I feel like there's information here I wasn't presented with to start with.
I mean, you did decide to have your mark focus on decay, so you're okay not having 20 fingers and toes, right? Anyway, no, I'm kidding.
I mean, you don't know how many toes he has.
That's true. We have not explored how many toes Esri has.
The way you phrase that, we have not explored how many toes that's just upsetting to a certain degree.
Anyway, so in a lot of in the popular imagination, if you have a mark, you might right now be a perfectly normal person, but it's a little bit like lycanthropy. How long is it going to be before it turns you into a monster?
Yeah.
So I think that's my interpretation. I think that's based pretty strongly in the source material, but that's really all I can say because I'm not Keith Baker. I wear a very different hat. Moving on. All right. Richard. I like this one. Richard asks, what room is an absolute must for the Treehouse? And how many students do you expect the Treehouse to be able to hold? So we described the Treehouse some in an upcoming episode, so I don't want to get into what we did describe. But, I mean, the nature of a Treehouse it would theoretically be expandable. So what is a room that was going
to be my answer, is like,
yeah,
the absolute must room is whatever. I mean, we'll make it whatever it is.
So what? Well, okay, let's hear that. What is the room that Esri needs to have in the Treehouse, and what is the room that Ari needs to have in the Treehouse?
I mean, at some point, Esri, let's see. Yeah, this is weird because we talk about this coming up, and we didn't fully define everything. So I don't know what isn't there at the moment, but I mean, Esri would want a what's the right term? I don't know what the term would be in a treehouse, a greenhouse, but
sure,
it's a tree. So somewhere to grow things on purpose.
For Ari, it would absolutely be like a large
walk-in closet.
Yeah, a large yeah, exactly.
And a shirt shredder.
Yeah, got to dispose of them somehow. He just burns them. No, a large communal space where people could gather and spend time, because like where Ari currently lives, he can't do things like host Unity dinners. He has to rely on other spaces to participate in that custom, and that being such an important part of his culture to him, he would definitely want to have a large space where he could have
a great room.
Yes. have 20 to 30 people over to have a nice big potluck. So yeah,
Awesome.
without informing his roommates.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
they're
of course.
I didn't say you all were invited.
And how many students do you expect to be able to support? Right now, as defined, not very many.
Very.
But
0 students at the moment.
Ari is teaching Shade how to read, so one student.
that's fair. I am really curious. Like I don't want you to answer it right now, but I just want to express one thing. I'm very curious to see is both. The idea came up in the conversation surrounding Donabella that we need to train her, and so I am curious to see whether that idea develops and how that kind of responsibility plays with Esri and Ari, the 2 most responsible members of the party so far.
Somehow.
Although I mean, to stand up for your companions, the 2 that you have not labeled as the most responsibility are the 2 that have actual steady work.
That's fair. Yeah, they do have jobs. You're a drug dealer, Esri. Calm down.
That's on the side. Well, I mean, I guess it's always basically drugs, but
Yeah, I mean, you are a druggist.
You are a drug dealer, and I am what could be most generously called a manipulator of the market.
Fixer. You're a fixer.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing that whether that concept develops and whether that's where this goes, because it's not. I mean, I haven't
in pharmaceuticals.
There you go. Because I haven't set this up to manipulate you all into forming the Xavier Institute.
Well, one of us is going to have to go lead the Brotherhood. So
right, yeah. So interesting.
We need to find Xavier is what we need to do.
That's very true. All right, and then
we need a grown up desperately.
a quick set of rapid fire from Laura. 1, how many cats are in the treehouse?
I think 0. I don't
0
think
right
0
now,
at the
as far as
moment.
we know. Yep. Who knows how long that will last? Are Esri and Ari frenemies now?
Well, it's certainly not a bromance, but
I'll answer this semi-seriously. At least from Esri's point of view, the idea that Ari is an enemy of even partially an enemy, it does not exist. That's not, no way.
yeah. No, and I would agree
So
with
if
that.
that's the idea of the question, that they are friends that don't, necessarily get along, okay, sure. But I just, the enemy part of that just isn't part of the equation at all.
No, and I think it will be interesting to explore down the road the things that Ari and Esri do find common ground on, because I think that there are fundamental things that Ari and Esri believe in their worldview that they do not agree on. Mm-hmm. But there could be things that they do enjoy together and agree on, and that's where they focus. They just don't talk about the other stuff most of the time. It's like, hey, how about this? And so it'll be interesting to see that aspect develop. So
Yeah.
And we have seen already things they disagree about that didn't cause real conflict, right? It's just this last episode was something so particularly...
How to treat Pog with common decency is something that they clearly don't agree on based on an earlier episode interaction. Yeah, I agree.
Whether or not to just start shooting at other people's problems.
Yep.
Why doesn't Ari?
But, I mean, they just
get
went out to
tips?
dinner after that, so
Yeah, I mean that's true. You guys had very different opinions on what you should have done in that moment, and but still, at the end of the day, you just
Went and
went
grabbed
out to dinner. Why doesn't Ari get tips? I mean, obviously he's just not very good. Come on.
No, Ari, presumably this question would have come up in fiction also at some point with one of his companions, and Ari would have simply said that it's not common in core of our culture to tip, and so a lot of times when people see a core of our performing, they don't tip because they don't think that that's customary, which Ari is very flummoxed and frustrated by, because that's a stereotype that isn't necessarily founded in reality about his culture, but that's kind of what's perpetuated over time. And so, yeah, it's like, I would love to get tips, but nobody does it. And it's because of they think that my people don't tip. When actually just a lot of us are very poor.
That's what we'll go with.
Real story. Well, wait, so to clarify, you're saying people think that your people don't tip?
And
Or that
therefore
your
they
people
tip
don't
you.
like...
Tipping's not a part of our culture.
Okay.
And
So true story. I spent a semester in Italy in college, in this little medieval town, and first time out to eat in a restaurant there, left a tip.
yeah.
Just natural. Didn't think dude, the owner, I assume he's the owner, he's the guy that was always there, literally ran out after us as we were leaving to give us our extra money back. Like, not a thing, like actually offensive there. Like, you learn that pretty quick. So yeah, I can imagine if someone got that impression from those people at some point, it's like, oh, don't
I've
want to
gone
make
out
that
dining.
mistake again.
Gamer Nation Con, the con that Philip and I go to for D20 Radio, has a lot of international visitors, and I've gone out to dinner with people who are but I'm paying for my food, and the restaurant pays for the labor, like, and I'm just like, well, not here. You pay for both, so.
All right. When you talked about the push mechanic, RA mentioned a character he pushed to death. What happened?
Okay, so this wasn't really, like, it was not part of a push mechanic. That didn't exist. But the idea was, yes, I will commit to a course of action for a character that might lead to their harm if I think it's right for the character. So this was in the One Ring system. I was playing a character who he was the only one of his culture in the group, and they encountered a witch, essentially, and that offended him greatly. His culture, I played it as they were fairly superstitious, but also just sort of like in like the sort of Earthwise way, to where mostly there's a lot of superstition, but there's like the base truth that they've experienced. And so like the witch in his area was just deeply offensive to him, and he felt honor bound to go deal with it. And he didn't want to get his companions involved in that because it wasn't their fight in his mind. He was very sneaky. He was good at stealth. He snuck away in the middle of the night to go find her, and the dice went against me. He got tricked. He got tricked into falling into a swamp, and then got tangled up. And one of the things about that system is once you take a certain amount of damage, endurance loss in that system, then the rolls get doubly hard to succeed at. Well, I'm sure the math is actually worse, but it's very much harder to succeed at. And so it was just I just kept not being able to roll, and he drowned.
Yep.
And it was a very stupid thing to do metagaming wise. Obviously, you don't go after things on your own in these games, but it was just very much what he would have felt honor bound to have to do, and the dice went against me.
And as I said in that moment, I feel like there are much more creative things I could have done with that moment than let him die. But here we are. All right. And lastly,
he had a ton of money on him.
Oh, he did. Yeah, he had so much stuff.
Really well.
So much stuff.
And he had no use for money. He just had it on him.
Well, that's why you drowned. That stuff weighs. Like,
yeah. I'm sorry, Eric, I don't have it on my list. Who is this
Richard.
last question from Richard? All right, another question from Richard. Just how deep is Ari's jealousy of Esri, and is it only limited to his looks and fashion sense, or does it also extend to his powers?
Oh, so we're still talking about drowning. Got it.
Yeah. No, I'm sure there are aspects of Esri's lifestyle and what Esri is capable of doing that Ari, I don't know if would say jealous, but maybe a bit envious of. Certainly not his looks and fashion sense. He smells like a day-old set of laundry that you forgot to put in the dryer. But but yeah, no. I'm sure there's aspects that we'll explore. So.
And then on a serious note, Ari
I'll
seemed...
answer that
Yeah, go.
actually, if it's all right from Esri's point of view too, because I
Please
think it's similar. I mean, there's definitely things. It comes up, so I won't mention it exactly, but there's absolutely things about Ari that Esri is jealous of. So I wanted to say this earlier. Esri, there's this another interesting difference between them, in that they have precisely like opposite skills that it would be really good for someone to have both of, and they don't. And maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't seen your character sheet, so I might be wrong. But Esri understands people. He knows how to read people. He sees and observes. He has no idea what to do with people. Nothing. Like, his charisma is just non-existent. I mean, not non-existent, but
Sure.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to convince people of anything. Ari, of course, knows how to talk to people.
-1 wisdom modifier. No idea how to
yeah,
read
it was just like this.
Just he's gonna go for the gusto every time he talks to somebody, regardless of what they think. So yeah.
So you just need to work together with that telepathic link.
Yeah.
To be a unit in conversation.
Just like
we
real
did
people.
with the Donna Bella situation.
Right. Just like real people. Like, there's so many instances where it's just like, well, if you would just work together, things would go all right. But that's
Right.
hard.
Yes. And then we kind of talked about this a little bit. On a serious note, Ari seems to be assuming a leadership role, especially regarding conversations, and getting the team involved in combat situations they seem otherwise to wish to avoid. What are Ari and Esri's thoughts about this at this stage? So we talked about Eric being surprised that Ari is a bit of a leader in the group. What is Ari's feeling about that?
I think that probably it would have become evident over the course of their travels that this was something that was necessary. Because I think when they were in the Blackwell Company, it wouldn't have been apparent because we had leadership. But I think there probably would have been this point where Ari was just like, oh crap, like we need to get stuff done, and Ari is competent in that given his background with his culture. In terms of, I think it also, in terms of the combat situations that Richard mentioned, like you don't let somebody just get harmed for your own benefit kind of thing is something that's deeply ingrained into Ari, once again, from his cultural background. And so, I mean, if he sees a girl getting chased by forks in the street, he's going to shoot the forks. Like, that's not even a thought to Ari. And he's going to encourage Shade, who he knows can blast like a massive force, to go try to do the thing. And it's hugely irresponsible, which I think is Ari's youth coming into play. That like, he didn't think about the fact, well, what if the forks come straight at Shade and cut her up? Like, it was just, that girl's in danger, go protect her, go do the thing. And so I think there is a large amount of irresponsibility that goes unchecked a lot of the times because there's no adults in the room to go, hey, you stop it. But Ari was surprised initially, but has accepted that role as being something that's necessary at this stage. So,
okay. And Esri, how does Esri feel about this dynamic that's developing?
Esri is fine about letting Ari talk, in the sense of like, in those situations where someone needs
certainly
to talk.
Didn't seem like it in that house, but
in the situations where someone needs to talk, sure. Obviously, Esri doesn't have any desire to get involved in something voluntarily, especially something that's going to require the use of his abilities. Combat-wise, he doesn't have tools other than his abilities to defend or attack. Like, that's just, if he's not, if his club isn't magic, it's just a stick, and he's not that strong. So it's this double fear from Esri of, okay, first of all, I don't want other people in my life, really. That hasn't worked out very well. I know at base I can trust these other three. Let's leave it at that. That's his like default. That's changing by necessity. But the other thing is, and yeah, if we get into a fight, Pog and Shade can hit things with their hands and feet and be useful, and Ari can do things in a way that's not so obvious. But as we saw, Esri's thing, super obvious. Everyone knows, oh, that's magic. Who did that?
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy covered in moss, all right? He did it.
All right. Well, this is now officially a Geek Pantheon production because this is supposed to be a short episode and it's gone on for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's good conversation.
So much more to say.
Well, we'll have another one of these sometime. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap up there. You can find, as I mentioned before, you can find links to all of our socials and to our Discord in the description down below. We hope you have enjoyed this. We hope you're enjoying these little extra episodes. If you have thoughts and comments about what you've liked and what you haven't about Khyber Shards, put them in the comments down below. We're happy to get some useful feedback and ideally constructive feedback that we can use to keep making this a fun show. And
if you happen to want to do the guessing character thing, don't do it in the YouTube comments. Even though
Discord,
go ahead and do it in the YouTube comments, but then go to the Discord and do it there so you can keep track of it.
Do both.
Yes.
And speaking of giveaways, we are on the path to 2,000 subscribers, and when we hit that point, we will buy you a D&D book. So yeah, subscribe down below if you aren't already subscribed. Most of you are not. I can see you. So yeah, just go down, subscribe, like the video, and you might get a free D&D book. And by the time we hit that goal, maybe Candlekeep Mysteries will be out, and you can get that one for free. So yeah, just go do it.
In all seriousness, everyone, we really appreciate you watching. We really appreciate all the comments that we have gotten and the nice feedback that we've gotten from so many people. We all feel silly with the like and subscribe shilling. We must feed the algorithm. The algorithm must eat.
I lean into it.
Yes, and you do so well because you're much more extroverted than I am. But we do really appreciate it when you can do that and help us feed the algorithm. Which RA, we were discussing in a comment stream what the domains of the algorithm would be as a D&D god, but it occurred to me we were having the wrong conversation. It's not a god; it's a warlock patron.
Yeah, that's true.
With which we have with which we have made a pact at great cost and with the potential for great power. Anyway, so thank you all so much.
Everyone thinks it's chaotic, but it's actually lawful.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, that's
just changes the laws every 3 months. Anyway,
thank you so much for watching. This has been Khyber Shards. I'm Philip.
I'm Eric.
I'm RA.
And we'll see you next time.